We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words from the Declaration of Independence are familiar to many of us, and yet it took 143 years for women to get the right to vote, and 189 years for Black people to get the right to vote. And still today, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are still only words for many people. Here in Boston, life expectancy varies by 30 years, depending on where you live. In Roxbury, with many poor and Black people, life expectancy is 59 years. In the Back Bay, wealthy and mostly white, life expectancy is 91 years. It's tough to have liberty when you are in prison. The United States incarcerates 716 people for every 100,000 people. Our rate of incarceration is more than 5 times higher than most countries in the world. Millions of people in our country don't have health care, a decent job, good education, a home they can afford, and that makes it pretty hard to pursue happiness. So on this show, you are going to meet people who are making it possible to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. People today who are making the words of the Declaration of Independence come true.
Hello, my name is Michael Jacoby Brown, and I'm your host of We Hold These Truths. And today we're really honored to have with us two people who are doing some great work on an issue that affects all of us, or everyone that ever wants to flip a switch and have electricity. We have Maria Axner and Monty Pearson, both who are working on fixing the grid. That's the electricity that most of us use every day. So Maria, welcome, and Monty, welcome. Can you tell us, Maria, first a little bit about yourself and where your values about caring for justice came from?
Yeah, I mean, they came from my family, my Jewish family. They taught me the concept of tikkun olam, which means in Hebrew, repair the world. And so that's a lot what my life has been, is thinking about how do we make things better. You know, I worked in the field of labor for a long time and other things. And then, you know, I wanted to do something about climate because I have a daughter, I have nieces, I have nephews, I may have grandchildren at some point. I care about the future. I care about what's going on right now. Oh my God, you know, we need to think about how to get a hold of this. And so that's how that's what brought me to this.
Really, huh?
And then, you know, in terms of the grid, I just want to say that before I got involved in Fix the Grid, I knew nothing about electricity and how it comes into our homes, from where, and how it gets fueled. You know, like, I didn't know anything. Yeah, there's some wires out there, and, you know, I have a thing, I plug it into the wall, and I get TV or whatever I want.
Yeah, how cool is that, right?
It's very cool, right? But in terms of what actually it took to bring it there, that's a whole other thing. So I've learned about that. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit my background.
Well, thanks. And Monty, tell us a little bit about yourself, Monty Pearson.
Sure. I started out in my family. I lived in a rural area in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, wow.
And my father was the chief of the volunteer fire department for many years in the town. And my mother served on the school board of the little school that I went to, a little 2-room schoolhouse in the hills. And so conversation around the dinner table would be about what was going on in the community and what needed to be done and how we go about getting a fire station and things like that. So from an early age, I had an idea that part of life was to be doing things in your community, make things better. So I just kind of carried that with me, and you know, I really credit my parents with giving me that kind of feeling. And you know, after I came out here to Massachusetts and went to UMass Amherst.
Oh, great! Yeah.
And I really felt that I was drawn to being active in activities that were designed to fix some kind of problem. So I've been involved in a lot of volunteer groups that I do in addition to working. I was involved in the stuff around South Africa and the nuclear freeze movement in the 80s.
Oh, great.
And I shouldn't say that because that dates me, right?
No, it's
anyway.
okay.
It's okay amongst us,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. Getting older is great.
Getting older is better.
And the alternative is not so great.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Right.
That's exactly right. And I got involved with Fix the Grid because I think that it's important for us to have really concrete ways in which we're going to try to fix things like the climate.
Yeah.
I mean, you see fires like what has gone on in Los Angeles, and people say, "Oh, what are we going to do about that?" And the truth is that there are actually lots of small things you can do, and then bigger things that you can do that will actually address it. And people shouldn't say, "Oh, you know, this is impossible." People should say, what are the things I can do that can make a difference here? And if other people in other parts of the country and parts of the world do those things, then we can make a lot of changes.
And still have electricity, which is
And still have electricity, yes.
which is
Fix the
kinda
Grid is about
convenient.
fixing the grid, not about getting rid of the grid.
Right. Nobody watching this would be watching this if there wasn't a grid, if there was not electricity.
I'm
right.
very fond of electricity.
Yeah.
I turn on my electric blanket each night when I go to
you
bed,
do,
etc.
really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I all 24 hours of the day I want electricity. But there are other ways of doing it than burning fossil fuels.
Right, yeah, I just put, thanks to some friends of mine, solar panels finally on my house. I'm lucky I live here in Arlington and have a nice south-facing roof, and
Oh, that's
my
great.
electric
Yeah.
bill is now zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that's-
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it costs some, but I was lucky to be able to do it. So tell us a little bit about the grid. I mean, some people know what it is, but most people, like me, I know if I want hot water, I plug my hot water heater in and it works.
Yeah.
So,
Tell us,
so first of all, we're involved in this group called Fix the Grid,
yeah,
which is, you know, a number of environmental organizations and individuals. And what we're trying to do is, and we're all from New England, so it's not just Massachusetts, but what we're trying to do is change the governance of an organization that makes decisions about the grid, and that's called the Independent Systems Operator of New England.
Independent Systems Operator of New England.
Right. And
well, yeah.
have you talked about that? Like, is that on your, like...
No, I'll tell you the truth. I'm maybe embarrassed to say it. No, I'm really not. I don't know much about it.
And most people don't.
No. So you're fixing the grid. One of my favorite sayings, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's broke about the grid?
What's broke about the grid
Pardon my bad English.
is
but,
that
you know.
it's governed in a way that is completely undemocratic and favors fossil fuels and
Okay.
utilities,
How so?
rather than, say, you and me and ratepayers, okay?
Okay. Tell me like how it works, and tell anyone who's listening how it works, because I really don't know.
I mean, they're a group that makes decisions behind closed doors. It's also not transparent. I'm going to turn over how it works to Monty. He's going to tell you about the different parts of the grid.
Can we
Okay.
show slide 2 here? I've got it up on the screen.
Yes.
The electric grid has 3 parts. And the first part is generation of electric power. And it is done by privately owned power plants. Some are fueled by natural gas that has been fracked in Pennsylvania. We're a big importer of fracked gas from Pennsylvania. We have nuclear plants in New England. There are hydropower plants in Canada that we import electricity from. And also we have wind and solar power generators right here in New England. And so that's the power generation part of the grid. And then there is the transmission part, and those are the really big wires that you see going across country.
Right.
Those are owned by large utilities like Eversource and National Grid. And
So
then
that's separate. The generation is owned
Yes.
by different entities
Yes.
than the transmission.
That's right.
Correct.
That's right. The
Okay.
transmission is owned by the utilities, but the energy is generated at power plants that are owned by usually by private companies.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the final stage is distribution into a town, and specifically to businesses and homes. And that part is usually owned by utilities, but not always.
That's separate from the transmission?
It's a little bit separate from the transmission in that many towns have municipal power plants.
Oh, okay.
And anytime you have a town with municipal power plants, they frequently own the wires or at least have some kind of connection, agreement with the utilities, the big utilities, about how those wires get done.
Okay.
So those are three kind of parts of the grid. So if you hear a conversation or read an article in the paper about transmission, what they're talking about is the big power lines that go across New England that go from the power plants to the distribution points.
Okay.
And that is what we call the grid. And if we have, could we put up another slide here? Let's see. Let me push this button. There we go.
That's like, wow. ISO is what again? You got to get these acronyms.
Independent Systems Operator of New England.
Those are the generators.
No, they are the organization,
Oh, okay.
and they're like a nonprofit, but
Oh, they are.
they are run by the government, and they govern our grid. They make the decisions about fuel, about what fuels our grid. They make decisions about transmission. They make those kinds of decisions.
And this is a governmental entity, the independent.
It is.
Say
The only
name
answer,
again. It says ISO. We got to get
Right.
rid of these
Right.
acronyms. 'Cause-
It's a regional governance organization that is. They answer to FERC, the federal.
no, who's FERC now?
Right, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Okay, we got to do away with all these acronyms
Oh,
because
I
I
know.
don't know what they are.
It's scary how many acronyms
Yeah.
there are.
Never mind about FERC. The thing is that this ISO was set up by Congress in the 1990s.
You know, instead of saying ISO, say the whole name.
Okay, the independent system operators were set up by Congress in the 1990s, and there are a number of them around the country.
Okay.
And the idea was that the electric grid would be more efficient if there was a regional
Okay.
coordination of power rather than having it be done state by state.
Okay.
So let me just tell you what they're supposed to do, their job, their mission.
This independent.
Yes,
Could you
systems
take
operator.
down the slide, please?
Okay.
What they're supposed to do is, first of all, ensure energy reliability, ensure that we get electricity. That's
Got
the
it.
first thing.
Right.
They administer wholesale markets of energy, so they set a wholesale cost, and they ensure a future capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So they make sure that there's more energy that's going to be available in 3 years.
Right.
And they plan the transmission system, which we talked about.
Okay.
And that's another key area we'll be talking about.
And who appoints or elects these people?
Oh,
who
that's
are-
such a good question.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. How
They
do I
elect
get on it?
themselves,
Like,
right.
I
well,
want
I
to.
don't think that they're going to ask you to be
No,
on the board.
you never know. I mean,
no, I don't think so.
such a
because
good-looking guy,
they
you know.
invite their own people, and most of them are people who have worked in the fossil fuel industry or in
okay.
the utilities. So they
Okay.
they appoint themselves.
They appoint them.
They appoint their friends.
Who actually literally appoints them? Who's the authorizing
Well,
agent?
the board of ISO New England invites other people to be on
And
the
how
board.
do I get on the board?
I'm sorry, I don't think that.
No,
you-
not me personally. How does
Yes.
one get on the board?
The way it works is that the board of directors is a self-perpetuating body.
Okay.
If somebody's term comes up and they decide not to be on the board anymore, the board goes out and seeks people to
The
be
board.
on the
And
board.
how did the board originally
The
get
board was
set up?
originally put together by the utilities and the power companies. the power plant companies. And so the board consists of people who are from the fossil fuel industry.
So that's in the congressional authorizing of
Yes.
these independent
Congress
supplier
authorized them to do that.
independent
Right.
supplier organization?
An independent systems operator. Yes.
Independent systems operator. Okay,
Right.
take
Right.
me a little while
It's
to get
okay.
this.
It
Yeah.
takes a while.
The thing is that the board of directors is it's one of those things where you bring on other people who you feel comfortable with.
I get it.
And people
Yeah.
who have your point of view on things.
I got
Right.
it. Yeah.
And that's mostly people who have experience with the fossil fuel industry in one way or another. So new people with new ideas don't come onto the board.
I got it.
And one more thing, when we're talking about the mission, which is really important, I said ensure reliability,
Yeah.
all that. There's nothing in there that says anything about the environment and limiting climate change.
This is in there, meaning the congressional
their
bill.
mission of, and yes,
The what?
the mission of the Independent Systems Operator.
Which was established by Congress when?
1999 it went into operation.
Oh, okay.
They didn't say, oh, the other mission you have is to consider climate change
I
in
got
every
it.
decision.
I got it. Okay.
No, that's not there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So,
Right. Can we put the chart back up? Thank you. One of the reasons we believe that ISO is blocking the transition to renewable energy is, as you can see on this pie chart, here it is 2024, well, it's 2025 now.
Happy
And
New
Los
Year, yeah.
Angeles is burning and there are droughts
Right.
everywhere and stuff like that. And we still are using a lot of natural gas, which pumps out a lot of CO2. In the last 5 years, each of those years, the electric and fossil fuel generating plants who make electricity have pumped out 31 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere.
31 million tons. That sounds like a lot.
It's a tremendous amount. That's one of the reasons why it's so important how the electric grid gets powered.
Right.
31 million tons. And it's remained the same even though the climate crisis has gotten worse and people know more about it. It's sort of
Okay.
remained the same.
So let me just ask you a question. If we're going to fix this, you want to fix the grid.
Yes.
Yes.
What do we have to fix first?
Well, the first thing we have to do is we need to change the way in which the board of directors of ISO New England, the independent system operator, system operator of New England, change the way that board of directors
Is
put
chosen.
together.
And how do we do that? Who decides?
Well, what we think would be the best way of doing it is that if each state in New England, and there are 6 of them, was able to appoint a representative to the board of directors.
As opposed to now, it's a self-perpetuating body.
Exactly.
And in order to do that, would you have to pass national legislation?
No, we don't have to do it that way. What we could do is that we could have the governors of the 6 states insist that we don't like the way ISO works now, and we want to have it be run in a different
Would
way.
all 6 governors of, what's that, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island?
Yes. Yes.
They would all, like, unanimously have to agree to change this?
Yes. And we are pretty sure that the 5 Democratic governors of New England are open to thinking about doing this.
And how about the guy in Vermont? He's a Republican, but he's...
No,
New
Vermont
Hampshire.
is kind of open to that. It's New Hampshire that's
New
sort
Hampshire
of
is the
the...
problem.
Oh, because Kelly Ayotte just got elected governor.
That's right, and she wouldn't want to do anything that
Now,
Massachusetts
do they all
does.
have to agree? All 6 have to agree? Or
They wouldn't all 6 have to
Would
agree.
not?
No, they would not all have to agree, but they would need. But we would need to have enough of a majority of them that ISO felt pressured to change its rules, and the board of directors
they
could
would
change
feel,
its
no,
rules.
I want to be specific. They would feel pressured or they would have to change?
They would feel pressured to change.
So they don't necessarily.
They could resist.
Yeah. What does the law say? I mean, if 4 of them or 5 of them say we want to change it, what happens? They don't have to change. They could say thank you very much, but we like it the way it is.
Well, if you got to that point,
Yeah.
Massachusetts and Connecticut together use about 75% of the energy, electric energy in New England. And Massachusetts and Connecticut could leave ISO.
Well,
Yeah.
they could.
Yeah.
They could leave ISO and start their own independent system operator just for the 2 states.
And
that
do
would,
they or us want to do that?
Not yet.
I mean, is that a good idea? Would you suggest that?
Well, it would be better to have a regional organization because New England is a regional organization, but it would be better to do that, but it would be better to have Massachusetts and Connecticut reducing the amount of CO2 that's going in the air rather than being blocked by the small number, the 11 people who are now on the board of directors. So when push came to shove, yeah, it would be better if we broke off independently.
Okay, so is that what you're trying to do with Fix
No,
the
we're
Grid?
we're
pushing for the
trying-
governors to change the ISO board of directors.
And how likely is that?
We think there's a fairly good chance of that to happen if the states demanded it, yes. So it's a
Okay.
matter of, that's why we have a regional organization, is that we're
cool.
pulling together climate groups in all the different states
Right.
to push for this change that
And
we
is
think
this
would make a
just
big
up-
difference.
Excuse me, is this just up to the governor, to Governor Maura Healey in our case, in Massachusetts?
It's
or does-
mostly up to the governors, yeah.
But we have a lot of people in Massachusetts who want this, and we have, you know, she has a lot of people working for her.
Okay, so what would you suggest? Someone's watching this and they think, boy, that's really not how we should do it. What should they do? Call you? How do they
They
find
should
you?
get involved and fix the grid.
How
is
do
what
they do
should
that?
We have a slide for that.
Oh, good. There it is.
Could you put up our slide where it says fix
Get
the grid?
involved. Fixthegrid.org. Fix
It's- yeah,
hyphen
it's
the
on.
hyphen grid.org.
Right. They get involved in
Right.
that.
Fix the Grid meets on a monthly basis, and you can either be an individual member or you can have a representative from an organization.
What does it cost to be a member?
Nothing.
Uh-oh. My
It's
community
free.
organizing hat goes. Like, you can be anybody, you can be a
You can-
terrorist
anybody. Well,
and
we
join.
don't allow terrorists.
How do you
but
stop them?
How do we present?
we
No,
haven't-
seriously.
We haven't had that happen
haven't
so
had that
far.
problem.
We haven't had that problem.
Okay.
Most people are kind of wonky, but we invite anybody to be here. And we have activists who care.
Okay.
And you don't have to be.
You haven't had problems with weird people
No,
wanting to?
we
Okay.
haven't.
Well, no, even if
ready
we
for
have
that.
people who, I mean, we operate kind of as a consensus as a group. We have about
Okay.
15, 20 people who come to our meetings each month on the Zoom, and they represent organizations all around the state.
Okay.
And you know, if a terrorist decided that they wanted to infiltrate the group, or somebody who
Sort
was
of
kind of
slightly kidding, but you know.
Oh, okay. But somebody who was kind of strange, they would be outvoted.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a
Okay.
democratic organization.
Okay,
So-
so if somebody wants to do this, they should go to fix-the-grid. Like, I hope you can see that, anyone that's watching, and come on to your Zoom meetings once a month.
That's right. We meet for an hour each month. You would hear reports from committees about what their different people are doing.
And
We have a
when-
strategy
When do you
committee.
meet?
Monday afternoons
2
at 2
o'clock once a month.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's
2
okay.
o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, for an hour?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what else should people know? Because we have like
I
5
want to talk
minutes.
about our electricity rates.
Yeah, go ahead.
And maybe, yeah, you can show the slide on that. But Massachusetts and the New England states have some of the highest electricity rates in the country.
I could see 33.
It's like 33 cents a kilowatt hour.
And the
Okay?
average is 17.
17. Can you believe that? And
Yeah, I believe.
Okay, some of
you're
that
not lying.
is
I trust
because
you. Yeah.
our dependence on gas, which is, you know, the price varies. And when we had the crisis in Ukraine and there was a shortage on gas, the prices went way up. So it can fluctuate depending on what's going on in the world. That's one thing. And then just using fossil fuels is so much more expensive than renewables. That's another reason it's very expensive.
Okay.
And then another thing, the third thing is transmission costs a lot of money, and ISO says to the utilities, yeah, you can build as much as you want. We need more transmission, but we don't need nearly as much as the utilities would like to build, and that comes out on our distribution part of our electric bill. So you know, so there's different ways that if we had this democratically governed, if we did not use so much fossil fuels, if we had people who understood more about transmission, then, or didn't want to give the go-ahead to utilities to build tons and tons of transmission, then our utilities bills would be less. So,
Well, okay.
you know, I mean, our electric bills would be much less. So that's another reason that this is an important issue.
So if you want to save money on your electric bill,
Yes.
go to fixthegrid.org.
Yeah, and you know, there's people who have a little space heater in their house, and they all come around that space heater because they don't have enough money to spend on electricity. You know, they do have programs for low-income people, but people are really suffering around electricity and their costs of electricity. So that has something to do with it as well.
Can I add
It's really
something else?
expensive.
Please.
Sure.
Something I found out yesterday. I was doing some research just for this program, and I found that it turns out that Portugal, which is in Europe but not
Yeah.
a very wealthy country,
I know. Yeah.
only 10% of their electric power is generated by fossil fuels.
Yep.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
And the other 90% is from sun and wind and things like that.
Really
So
cool.
if Portugal can do that,
Right.
then there's no reason why
Right.
the United States can't do
Really, and I'll tell you, I was in Lisbon. Their subway's way better than the T. I'm telling you, it is. It goes really fast.
Yeah.
Unlike the red line or the orange line or the
Right.
green line,
Well,
which
that's
I
true of
ride a
many
lot,
subway
or
systems.
the blue line.
that. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of countries are just, you know, if you're not as wealthy as the United States, you can't afford to mess it up and do it inefficiently like we do things.
Well,
We need to be thinking about our electric
Okay.
grid and saying, how can we maximize the price for people and also maximize the amount of decline in CO2?
Okay.
And we need
That's great.
we need to have a lot of citizens' input to get that to
So
happen.
you've
Right.
got about a minute left. What's the one thing you want to tell people?
Go ahead.
Get involved.
No, specifically. Not get involved. I want you
Okay.
to be more specific.
The electric grid is in a transition from fossil fuel power to renewables. And there is no reason to drag our feet doing that. When we did the transition from carriages to cars,
I
we didn't
remember,
have the, huh?
I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
When we did that transition, no one said, oh, the government ought to be subsidizing carriage makers, and we ought to be giving them extra money and making sure we hold back car production so that the carriage makers can still make a profit.
Got it. Okay, so what I want you to know, if you're listening to this, go to fixthegrid.org, and Monty and Maria Axner, Monty Pearson and Maria Axner will be able to help you understand how to not only fix the grid, but save money on your electric bill. And I don't know about you, but most people not only want to have renewable energy and have a climate that is here for our children and grandchildren and us, as well as saving money on electric bill. So Maria Axner and Monty Pearson, want to thank you for coming on our show, and thank you for all your work to fix the grid. So again, it's fixthegrid.org, and you'll be able to hang out with these wonderful people and do something really worthwhile for yourself and anyone who comes after you. Thank you.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.